just before we keep going talking about the Greens, we've got an Australian woman living in Israel on the line to talk to her. Just before we bring her in and chat to her about what's going on in Israel, Netanyahu has called up 300,000 reservists to start to prepare for a ground offensive in Gaza. Let's just show you some footage of some of those reservists preparing. They are here pictured singing the national anthem. Have a look. So we've got joining us from Israel, Hayley Alpern. Hayley moved from Sydney to Israel 6 years ago. She lives there with her husband and their 8-week-old child. Her husband, on his 30th birthday, has just been called up to serve in the military. Thanks for taking the time to join us, Hayley.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Hayley, just before we get to your husband being called up and the emotions and things surrounding that, can you just tell us when the terror attack first occurred in Israel? Where were you? What did you hear, see? How did it affect you personally?
Definitely. So it was Saturday morning and I woke up to breastfeed my 8-week-old baby, hearing her starting to cry in the background. And then shortly after that, we heard the sirens wailing overhead, which unfortunately in my 6 years of living in Israel, I already know means that there are thousands of rockets flying overhead and we need to run to a safe room. I was in my home in a community that was probably about 45 minutes north of the border. And we ran to downstairs because our house does not have a safe room. And we waited it out for about 6 or 7 hours as we just heard booms happening over our head, knowing that either over us or communities close by, people were also in their safe houses, hoping that bombs didn't land. And terrifyingly enough, when we were able to turn on the news as our electricity disappeared, we were hearing reports of many bombs landing in houses, in villages, in hospitals. The death tolls were rising to numbers that were unprecedented. And then the stories that are like a horror movie happening in real life started happening, that there were breaches and terrorists were making their ways into villages where my husband's families all live. People were staying in their safe rooms with children under the age of 6, 9 months pregnant, sending us photos of the house next door being bombed and therefore the glass in their safe room having shattered. My husband's uncle received a photo from his father's helper of his house being completely shut up and then not heard from for hours later, only to hear that he unfortunately had perished as the Hamas Palestinian terrorist group had taken over these kibbutzim and these moshavs and were just going at random and killing and slaughtering men, women, and children and elderly. And that was our Saturday, just hearing these terrible stories continue to unfold.
Hayley, it's so traumatic to even hear the stories. We can only imagine what it's like being there on the ground and knowing the people going through this alongside of you. Would you ever imagine 6 years ago when you moved to Israel that you could ever be caught up in something like this? And can you tell us a bit more about safe rooms? Obviously, it's a very foreign concept to Aussies. Do most homes in Israel have safe rooms? Do they share them? Are they kind of like war bunkers?
Yeah. So to your first question, unfortunately, it is a risk that we know as Jewish people from around the world that coming to Israel is not without its concern. Furthermore, making the choice to marry my beautiful husband, it's something that I had to think about, because knowing that I was going to raise a child in this country where most probably when she turns 18, she will have to go and stand on borders to try and protect us. It's something that we are aware of, but unfortunately have to find a way to feel proud for, as we know that it is supporting a country that is the only one in the world, as we're seeing that's happening in Australia right now, that is prepared to stand up for the rights of Jews. So in order to be here, you kind of have to take that risk knowing that it's a possibility. However, this is unprecedented. I've never seen, they're saying that it's the most amount of Jews killed in a day since the Holocaust. It's absolutely abhorrent to see the scenes. I don't know if it's made international media, but we inside are privy to some horror scenes of what happened in these villages. Stories about the people at the party down south that 260 people were slaughtered, where girls were having their mothers called so that they could hear them being raped. This is people that I know. This is not like anything that one could ever imagine. I don't think anywhere in the world, and the fact that people can say that contextually that this is deserved based on it is just against humanity. So no, I don't think I could have. And in terms of safe rooms, unfortunately, it is mandated that most new buildings establish a room in the house. It's called a mamad, which has a door that can withstand bombs and fire, which is how, thank God, some of the families that were having their houses burnt from the inside were able to actually survive. Inside, it's whatever you make of it. Some are empty, some are what you take in. My husband's sister, as I said, was 9 months pregnant with 2 children under the age of 6. They were locked in their room with gunshots happening around them for 12 hours, the children crying because they were hungry and thirsty, because they weren't able to manage to grab water or food to take in with them as they pressed their fridge up against the door so that no one could enter. And these are the stories that happened. There are so many stories coming out of parents that have put their children in that safe room, locked them in their babies, while they tried to fight the Palestinian terrorists outside, and were obviously killed, and their children were locked inside there for 8 to 9 hours until they were managed to find help. It unfortunately has become quite a regular game that parents have had to try and teach their children is okay to play, that when the sirens ring, we run to the mamad, we run to the safe room, and trying to explain to them why it's okay to be on the floor of a car as you drive out of your the community that you live in, watching your neighbors' houses absolutely demolished. This, unfortunately, has become part of the way that our children are being, and Israelis' children are being brought into the world, and having to explain that this is okay.
It's an awful position to be in, Hayley, and for our viewers, we're taking live images of Gaza there right now. But tell us a bit about your husband. Obviously, you've got a young child now, and you've been left on your own as he's been enlisted as a reservist. Tell us a bit about him and what he is expecting over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, he's a hero. On the morning of his 30th birthday, as you said, we had to send him off, send him back to our 8-week-old baby, and he is currently doing the best that he can, because this is an unprecedented amount of soldiers needed. He's working as much as he can to try and make sure that people that are going onto front lines have vests, helmets, knee pads, food, just basic equipment to support themselves. He's ensuring that there's food that's disseminated. He's helping that any other units that don't have the support that they need are taken care of. And unfortunately, it's one of those situations that is continuing to unfold. None of us know what is going to happen and roll out. Being on my own for the first time, every sound that you hear, you don't know what that means and what you can assume can happen. So it's a very difficult situation to kind of predict what will happen over the next little while. We have been told that this is not going to be a short resolution, to be prepared for weeks. I've been very lucky that I was able to drive up north and be gifted nappies and wipes for my little one, while I send videos and footage to my husband and hope that he can see it in the midst of his patrolling, just to kind of give him the support that he might need. And that's a lucky story. I am unfortunately around lots of people who are running from sirens as they're trying to mourn their husbands or brothers that have been killed on the front already, of people that are waiting to hear from their children. And unfortunately, like me, there are other Australians that are sitting at home while their husbands or partners go up to fight. And they are not just fighting the fight here and trying to get food to their loved ones, but also, as you've mentioned, they're fighting the fight back home. We are getting sights of what's going on in Sydney, New York, London, and the fact that people, not just people like civilians, but people in power, influential people, are trying to create a conversation that this is deserved. Us expats here are having double the heartache, trying to fight the fight, trying to get word out as to what actually the story is, that this is not a Israel versus Palestine. This is a terrorist group against civilians around the world. That what is happening in Australia with the protests, it's not just that. I'm getting word of people in Melbourne that have had their windows rolled down from Arab boys asking if they know where Jews are because they're on the hunt for Jews. That was at 5:00 p.m. Melbourne. This is no longer what is going on in Israel. This is what is happening around the world. This is not an Israel fight. And what Israel chooses to do is to defend the only country that tries to allow for Jews to have some kind of peaceful existence. So being someone that's at home, it's exhausting trying to support your husbands, your brothers, your family, friends, trying to do what we can for them here and trying to fight the fight back home, raise money to try and give equipment to them. So it's exhausting. I'm sure, as you can hear, I'm so angry and just riling. And I'm really grateful that you are covering the story this way, because it feels like the first that actually will allow the message. Sorry.
It's good to see your little one there too, by the way, Hayley.
Sorry?
It's good to see your little one there.
Oh, okay, yeah. She's doing her best to be an absolute angel, so thank God. Well, letting me know that she's all right with her nappy right now.
Well, Hayley, we really appreciate your time, and we're going to let you get back to your bub there. But love to you and your husband, and we wish you
so much.
every safety. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it.
A pleasure.